More about the cook and ski bums. Bonnie was still with us and delighted with Gert. In the mornings, she would rush down sleepy eyed to set the breakfast table, but first giving Gert a big hug. There'd be no slapping on the cheek by this cook. Things changed all around. Soon breakfast tables were set up the night before, after supper. When the kids are awake enough to remember everything to put on the table, Gert would say. Each morning, I would have to post the number of guests and family and help. The first of each month, I had to list the approximate number of guests expected for each day of the month. And then the first of the week, I'd update the list. Besides rules and lists posted in the kitchen, Gert would put up day's menus. It didn't take long for the girls to stop asking, "Soup tonight, Gert?" She'd just say, "Look at the menu." Besides correcting, making them behave, and being sympathetic, Gert had fun with the crew. If they decided to go to a movie in Breckenridge, they'd take her along. If it was over to Climax for some night skiing, she'd go along and watch with delight from the shelter window, bringing enough beer to quench everyone's thirst for the long ride home. She'd withheld the beer from the driver, but would hand whoever that was a Coke. Gert was a great knitter and crocheter. She'd ask the skiers to show her the latest styles. After dinner, she'd sit in the rathskeller near the kitchen door, keeping an ear out for the soup that was simmering away for the next day. Guests would walk by and stop to admire the ski hat she'd be knitting. Not only Max and the crew appeared on the slopes wearing Gert's hats, but the guests did too. That first winter, she knitted and sold over 200 hats. Spring came and skiing was over. Gert had to return to her Beaver Brook Lodge to be open by Mother's Day. She announced to me one day, "Edna, make out a list of all the canned goods you've got as leftovers. I'll buy them from you for our lodge. Come fall, I'll bring what I have left, and you can buy that." It was the best arrangement I'd had. Not only did my leftover canned goods follow Gert, but my entire crew did too. They helped her clean up her place, getting it ready to open, and then some of them stayed on all summer to work for her. After all, she had trained them. Gert was with us for 5 ski seasons, probably some of the happiest times at Ski Tip we remember. One summer day, a former guest came up to Ski Tip to just relax and visit. She was a news writer for a Denver paper. Having written an article on Ski Tip the year before, I thought how wonderful if she could do an item on Beaver Brook. I broached the idea to her. "Wonderful, I'll do it," she said. Little did I realize this was my undoing. The article on Beaver Brook was 2 pages with pictures of Gert, the entire family, and the menus, besides an excellent picture of the lodge. They were deluged with guests. Soon it was the place to go. I was delighted, never dreaming I'd lost Gert. Fall came, time for Gert to call about returning. She drove up one day to tell me they had sold their place. I knew they'd listed it several times. They both felt, being in their 60s, it would soon be just too much for them. After all the publicity giving them a profitable summer, they were offered and accepted much more than they had dreamed of asking in the past. As Gert put it, "It just boils down to the fact, Edna, that you can't afford me any longer." How true that was. She was priceless. For years, I kept looking for another Gert. Finally, as one guest told me, "You'll just have to accept the fact, Edna. You'll never find another Gert." As the years went by, we graduated to two cooks, one a chef and one a breakfast cook. We also had a reservation clerk. Things became easier even though we had over 60 guests. However, I often thought back, a bit nostalgically, to those enjoyable haphazard times when 12 guests made a full house. We were probably lucky that our ski bums were usually the offsprings of our guests. It wasn't unusual to have a parent call and ask if their daughter could work a winter season. "She's at college now, Edna, and just wants a year away, or maybe just a semester." Or, "She's so eager to become a really good skier, her 1 or 2 week vacations just aren't enough." Quite soon I found we had the best source of well behaved, fun loving, get along with the guests ski bums possible. What was more, they really worked uncomplainingly. Perhaps entertaining was common at their home, and they were required to help there too. They enjoyed one thing we had not had before. That was to carry out a few of the college sorority or fraternity jokes at ski tip. Coming home from skiing one day, I heard hilarious laughter down the hall. Our most dignified North Shore Chicago couple were standing at the door to their room and were convulsed with laughter. Jim, one of our ski bums, was standing to the side and saying, "Aha! We'd suspected you had smuggled a third guest into your room." Jim and his two co-conspirators had taken a rubber Santa Claus mask, removed all the whiskers so only fat reddish cheeks showed, and had put a frowsy red wig on top. Stuffing a pair of pajamas with pillows, putting rubber gloves on the ends of the sleeves, and then tucking all this apparatus under the covers, it looked quite lifelike and comfortably overfed. One rubber gloved hand held a can of beer, and the other the book by Love Possessed. This started a "you put one over on me, I'll get back at you" chain of reaction. I never knew what the guests would do in retaliation to Jim. One night at 1 a.m., 4 of them crept into the dorm room where Jim slept in one of the upper bunks. Taking hold of each corner of his mattress, they heaved and out he came onto the floor, mattress and all. Not satisfied with this, the ski bums and the guests started writing limericks about each other. They started singing them on the slopes. For us not to feel left out, I'm sure, they wrote a song about ski tip. When Max and I entered the dining room for supper, they were well rehearsed. "Oh, it never snows in Arapahoe, parlez-vous. It never snows in Arapahoe, parlez-vous. Oh, it never snows in Arapahoe. The drinking's fast, but the skiing's slow. Rinky-dinky, parlez-vous." And so it went. I believe the guests rejuvenated all the hanky-panky each season. With each new crew, away it went again. The ski bums joyfully would retaliate. A guest would come back from skiing to find his PJs on top of his well-made bed or hung on the door. Only they had been washed, starched, and then ironed. Years later, he would continue to tell the story of how he still couldn't get into them. Or have a guest announce he would like the cook to bake a cake, as one of the party was having a birthday. The lovely cake would appear all lighted with candles. One of the ski bums would carry it in with the entire crew following. everyone would join in singing happy birthday. The honored guest would blow out the candles, pleased at all this attention, and then begin to cut the cake. He would cut and saw away, unaware that the cake was really a cardboard shoebox covered with mint colored shaving cream. I was always apprehensive as to how the guests would accept these jokes. They loved them and were rewarded with a real cake right afterwards. It got to the point where guests felt ignored if they didn't have this kind of trick played on them.